How's it going, guys? My name is Stone. Welcome to these reviews, or welcome back if it's not your first time here. Today, we're going to be talking about a psychedelic album, rather controversial psychedelic album, by a rather controversial psychedelic band. That band, clearly, if you ain't aware, is the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, Volume 2, Breaking Through. Now, this would be the band's third effort, ironically, and would show them increasing their experimentation by like 10 notches, especially when you compare this to their album Part 1, which I'd say is pretty trippy, pretty psychedelic, but it also has a good balance of pop, accessible tunes. With this album, though, I'd say the accessibility is kind of withering away as they kind of experiment with just some excellent garage rock style of psych, as well as just some weird ass lyrics, which obviously come from the infamous Bob Markley, which is the guy who ran the band at the time. And if you already know the story or history about this band, you may know that Bob Markley had a fascination with young girls, and that isn't more apparent than on this record. There's a couple songs I will get into that really get people uncomfortable when you know the history of it and clearly what he's talking about in the lyrics. So I'll definitely get into why I think this is a great album with some real misses in terms of lyrics. And I don't know, even though I stayed away from this album for a while just because I heard the song Queen Nymphet, which is the one that really is obvious what he's talking about, I decided to listen to this album, and I was blown away by how good this was. In fact, this might be my favorite West Coast pop art experimental album. Just because the production's so clean, the song choices are so strong, and yeah, just the musicianship is fantastic. Like, all these guys, the Harris brothers, and whoever's drumming, because they don't say who drums on this album, is killer. So I'll just start going into the track listing because that's what we all came to see, right? It opens with the two most political songs in the album. The first being "In the Arena," which is one of my absolute favorites from this record. It starts off with this Bob like yelling out of a siren, kind of reenacting a story of people watching homeless Negroes, children, protesters just getting beat up. And I think it poses a real striking image and a striking introduction to this record, especially when you get to these la la la's that are like overlapping to some great guitar riffs and guitar playing. This whole album, or sorry, not this whole album, this song as a whole is just fantastic. I love the lyrics. They're very blunt, and I imagine back then that was pretty controversial, saying stuff about police like this or making this story. But I love the song absolutely, and I just think everything about it works, even if it is a little repetitive and half of it's maybe not even music. But I don't know, it kills. We then move to the second political song on the album, "Suppose They Give a War and No One Comes." The song's got kind of as Bob says, an Indian tribal chant, which I'd say is a bit, in terms of nowadays, a little misappropriation, which I don't really care. But the whole "unga ungas," that might be a little off-putting, but I still like how the song kind of flows with the guitar and the percussion, the bongos, and apparently the lyrics for some of this song is derived from a Teddy Roosevelt speech, which I think is pretty cool. Maybe it's just them trying to be political without knowing what they're talking about, but I like to believe that they're writing something genuine and trying to make a good statement, which I think is a great idea for a song name and just a book. Suppose they give war and no one comes, you know? Suppose they try to tell us what to do, but we refuse to do it for the sake of our lives. But in terms of the music, like I said, it's fantastic. It has a real nice mellow vibe to it that just picks up towards the end, which is real kick-ass in my opinion. So, great song. And then we move into the song "Buddha," which is kind of a confusing song for me. It sounds like Markley's really trying to be psychedelic with his lyrics, and he's really trying to act like this dude, like the man with a candy kind of persona. literally in the chorus he says, let me in, let me in, let me in, I'll give you candy, I'll give you avocados. That's much more than most people have to offer. Like, I don't really get what he's trying to say. It just sounds like he's trying to seduce a young chick, which, shame, bro, shame. But musically, the groove goes so hard on this, and like, even the vocal melody is really good. I don't know, I guess I'd say in the chorus, which I can't tell, in the, you know, he's like, in the fountain, and the mountain, and a tunnel for me to follow. Um, like I said, I'm not trying to say or act like I am ignoring the injustifications Bob Markley did, but I do think as a vocalist he does work on some of these songs, even if some of the lyrics are really crude and really bad, really bad. But not in the song. I think the song I really like, and it transitions perfectly into what I consider to be the best West Coast pop art experimental band song, "Smell of Incense." With this being over or close to 6 minutes long, this is like one of the most definitive psych songs I've heard in a while. I know I kind of say that I toss that around a lot, definitive this, definitive that, but I think this song really captures like just tripping hard on something. Whether or not you've tried acid or shrooms or whatever, you just hear it when the harmonies come in, the lush guitar sound, and just those amazing drum fills that are in this middle section of it. It's just such a beautiful song. It really pulls you in and gets you lost in this world. Just, God, I don't know how to like really describe it. It's just one of those songs you have to hear for yourself, and you're like, oh, I know what he's talking about now. Which I hope you do, because this is their best song. Like, as much as I love Volume 3 as well, I don't think anything on Volume 3 compares to this song, or Smell of Incense, I mean. We closed side 1 on the little overture that the band likes to do, or at least they did it on part 1, which I really like. It's kind of just like a little overture, a lot of droning, a lot of crazy drum work, and then it just closes on him saying, part 2, West Coast pop art, you know. And then it goes into some nice acoustic or guitar work, which I think, like I said, the guitar is fantastic on here. I've read people say that if Markley wasn't the singer of the band, this could have been one of the greatest like garage rock psych bands, which I do agree they still are. I don't know how much garage they are, but they definitely have a straightforward way of writing music while also putting amazing guitar solos over it. So yeah, that closes side 1, and honestly, side 1 is amazing. One of the best sides of psychedelic rock in my opinion. But I do think a lot of people cap on side 2 for being just too whatever, too tossed off, which I will agree, it's not as good as side 1. Like, side 1's just hella strong. But I really do like side 2, even though some of these songs on side 2 are pretty like on the nose in terms of talking about young girls. And that isn't more evident than on the next track, Queen Nymphant, which it's kind of tough. The song's a very much a guilty pleasure for me in the sense that it's a beautiful ass song. I love the chord progressions it has. I love the harmonies. It just sounds really good and sunshine poppy. But the thing is though, the lyrics are just so like, bro, we know what you're talking about. We know you're talking about like a 16-year-old or some shit. I mean, just, yeah, him keep saying, when you're older, when you're older. Like, I'd love to cover this song, but just change it to, like, you're old enough. Which, I mean, maybe that sounds worse. You know what I mean? I just want to sing the goddamn song without looking like a perv, because I'm not the perv Bob is. No offense to you, bro, even though I think he's dead. But, amazing song, though. If it wasn't for the lyrics, it'd probably be my favorite song on the album. But we then move into another banger in my opinion, even though it's still probably like one of my least favorites on the album. It just shows how consistently good this record is, besides the lyrics. Unfree Child, which also kind of has that same creepy vibe to it with the whole like, unfree child, oh, you should be free. Free from what? From school? No, just to be with you? I don't know. I'm making assumptions here at this point, but I think the music, regardless, really kicks ass. I like how it gets silent at some parts. Just adding silence to the music, you know, something that's not music whatsoever, really works in this track. And though it does maybe feel like a bit filler, I've seen some people say they don't like the song at all. I like it for what it is, and I think it's a great continuation for side 2. We then get to the heavy, fast-paced, let me see what it's called properly. Carte Blanche. I know I'm probably saying the first part wrong, but what a kick-ass song. I think this is Bob's best vocal performance on the album. He really hits it with those, rhythm just going hard. The drums are going crazy. The guitar is going nuts as well. I love the guitar tone on it, especially just on the whole album. And yeah, it's just like a nice surprise, because you haven't really got anything this fast up until this record, or up until this point of the album. So I think in terms of placement, it was a good choice because for me, it keeps my interest going to the last 2 tracks. The next one, Delicate Fawn, which I'd also say is a little too on the nose. I also get the same creepy vibe from Nymphant and Unfree Child. But I do like its more, I don't want to say country feel, I guess it's like bluegrass, banjo, I don't know what you call it. I like how they just switch it up a little, with a little banjo playing. It's pretty melodic. And I think it has bagpipes at the end too, which I think is pretty interesting. And I like the little ba 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 ba, like kind of like with In the Arena, how they have these like vocals overlapping it that don't necessarily match the rhythm, but they still kind of add that psychedelic charm, because not everything in psych music has to be like on point, as you've known with records like, I don't know, Anthem of the Sun, Anthem of the Sun, that's the first one I can think of right now, or just like, In the Arena, for example. Then we close on another outstanding track, probably one of my favorites. I think it's a great closer. It's very melodic, and it's not creepy. So that's a plus for me. It's Tracy Had a Hard Day Sunday, which, from what I can tell, sounds like it's talking about a girl who's trying to remain sober, even though, kind of like Tracy had a hard day Sunday. She had to be herself and no one else. Kind of that vibe, like trying to get away from your own persona by indulging in these substances, which at the end of the day, when you run out of them, are you going to be the same person, I like to think Bob wrote this in a way not towards a young girl, but just about a person in general, even though I would doubt that. I don't know, I feel like now that we've gone through the whole album, it is very controversial with some of these songs, and I think that's just if you know what the band's talking about. I think though, if you listen to the lyrics without knowing the band's history, you would still kind of get a creepy vibe from it, which on volume 3 I think it works, but on volume 2 I don't think the music is as creepy. I think they're going for a much more, sunshine pop-esque kind of sense, with some like, political commentary here and there and some wild playing and drumming. But honestly, this is a great record. I don't do reviews by stars, but if I had to like rate this by stars, I would give it like a 4.5. The only half, but the reason it's a half is just because the lyrics are creepy and you know what he means, because if you know, you know. So yeah, my top 3 songs though, fuck it, I'll do top 4. Smell of Incense, like I said, best song in the whole album, best song in their whole career. Then we got Tracy Had a Hard Day Sunday, then Buddha, and then In the Arena. I think In the Arena is such a kick-ass song. I not to keep talking about it, but it's just so like off-kilter. Very different from anything I've heard from this year, but like, it works. So yeah, there is my review. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion about it. Let me know if you think this album's appropriate in 2022, or do you think it's a classic? I see a lot of people capping on this album, both online and just, well, online, because I don't know anyone that knows this band in person, but I want to make a video about bad psychedelic albums sometime, because this album gets a lot of crap. And besides the lyrics, I think a lot of people just think it sounds mid. I'm like, what? No, it sounds great. But music's subjective at the end of the day, so what can you really do? Besides that, or anywho, I will see you guys in the next video. Ta-ta, bye.